Welcome to the Courage to Live podcast. My name is Josh Bitsko. I'm a retired police captain with 24 years of experience out of Las Vegas. Currently, I travel the country and I teach people about courage, resilience, and leadership. In today's Courage Cast, we're going to talk about something that I think most people have experienced in one point in their life, especially when they're switching jobs or receive a promotion, and that's imposter syndrome. So I know that there's been several times, pretty much every time I promoted, I've had that thought like, am I actually cut out to do this job or am I an imposter? And, but what is imposter syndrome? I mean, it really is that voice inside you that says, who am I to lead? And what if everybody finds out that I'm not as good as I think I am? When I first promoted to sergeant, I was young because I hired on the police department when I was 18. So I first promoted and I was 28. I was on a graveyard squad with a lot of young cops, and some of them I was barely older than, and some were older than me and had a lot of life experience. And I felt a lot of pressure to prove myself as a leader. And leadership can magnify that self doubt because everybody is looking for you or looking to you for the answers. I remember one of my biggest stressors, it wasn't going on a barricade or like a hostage situation because I was in K9 before I promoted. I'd been on a lot of those. It was one of my people calling me and me not having the answer. And I remember this. It was my first night as a sergeant, about 2 hours in, and one of my officers calls me. He's like, "Hey, Sarge, I have a question. I'm on a DV. Is a brother-in-law count as a domestic relationship, therefore making it a mandatory arrest?" And so the first question I got, I didn't know offhand. So I told him, I'm like, "Hey, you look it up in your, our Nevada Revised Statutes book, and I'll look it up in mine, and then call me back." So we found the answer. I think at the time it turned out that wasn't a mandatory arrest, but I was so worried about being an imposter. But then the first time I was confronted with not having the answer, I mean, I knew where to find the answer. And I also think that there's a little bit of imposter syndrome can be a little healthy. It doesn't mean you're overconfident. It just means that you get the gravity of leadership. Like being a leader is the most important role that you can take on in your career, wherever you're working, because you have a team that is entrusting you not just with decisions, but their overall wellness. I mean, it's important to know your people and take care of them and make sure that you build a culture that people want to work at. And so I don't want anybody in a leadership role that's going to take that lightly. So having a little bit of self doubt, it can give you a drive to get better. And, as I've talked about in other podcasts, you should always be striving to improve as a leader. The first day that you take that position, all the way up until the day before you retire, you should always be trying to be a better leader. Know that imposter syndrome is rooted in comparison and being perfect. And when you're always trying to be perfect, there's a little bit of shame that's involved in that. So we compare as we've all heard, you're comparing your own behind the scenes to somebody else's highlight reel. But like I just mentioned, a little bit of self doubt. I'm not saying not trusting yourself, not being able to make a decision, or freezing because you think that you're an imposter, but being realistic about what you can do to improve and what it really takes that you're taking this leadership role serious is it's not a bad thing. So a couple things that you got to be careful with when you're dealing with that imposter syndrome is overworking to prove yourself or avoiding new challenges out of fear of failure or not asking for help because you think you should already know. That can be exhausting to go through all of that. And so being humble and open to be better, to take new risks and challenges. So because you learn from failure, as I've talked about. So the leaders that question themselves are often the ones that care the deepest. So know that if you are questioning whether you are right for this role, that means you really care about that role and what you're doing. So if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe or leave a review. And I do appreciate you spending some time with me today.